Well, hi everyone, and thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We've been looking forward to this for a while. And over the last 34 years, we have developed a lot of information. And what we really are looking forward to doing is sharing information with you through a series of webinars. And this will be the first of a number of programs that we'll do online so that we can partake of the information about sacred geometry that we've been developing over the years. And what are you doing there? Gregory's adding some lights here. Okay, so what we'll do in this webinar is we'll start out with Gregory is going to be doing a slideshow, and he'll get more into the specific information. And I guess I didn't start out by saying I'm Gail Hogan. This is my husband, Gregory. And there we go. And so he'll start out with a webinar, rather with a slideshow that goes over why is it that we're all so attracted to sacred geometry? What are the implications in our life? What is it about sacred geometry, the patterns, the rhythms, the flows that are intrinsically known to us? And they certainly are something that we've known over the years make a big difference in our health, our well-being, our level of consciousness, all of that. So it's really a very fascinating ride to be working with sacred geometry. So Gregory's going to start out with some basic information today, and then we will be building on that more and more in future webinars. During the session, we would like you to use the feature of for Q&A in the chat function. And if you will type in some of your questions, we'll be able to see that, field some of those questions, and then during his talk, as appropriate, we'll answer some of those questions. So please interact with us because we love that, and that just makes it juicier, and we learn from that as well. We are broadcasting to you energetics. We have a lot of different sacred geometry tools that are here in our home, on our land. And so we have some setups that are captured really on video. I mean, we've done this so many different times where when we have those energetics going, people feel them. So we suggest that you just take a few moments and just notice that and allow yourself to experience the flow of that energy. I will, at a point when Gregory's finished his presentation, I'll do a short meditation. And I think that'll be a nice way to kind of wrap things up. We'll have a few more questions after that, if you like. And then we will wrap up the program with a very special offer. So please stay with us, stay tuned. This is being recorded. So if for some reason you need to leave early, you can come back. We'll have a link that we'll send out to you. And we are really looking forward to getting started and letting this be something that we'll continue to do with you. So again, thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Gregory.
Thank you. So I want to get right into this because we have only a little bit of time, and it's such a big subject. And I could go on for weeks and weeks, but what we really want to get into your consciousness today is talking about starting with this very famous equation by, of course, Einstein, and that was E equals mc squared. And in this equation, just to understand it simply, we all understand that the E is for energy, and that energy is equal to mass, which is virtually everything in the universe that you see, everything that you can touch, everything that you can bump into. When you take that mass and you multiply it times the speed of light, which is a tremendously big number, 186,000 miles per second. And there are studies being done now which are bumping the speed of light up even more into over 600,000 miles per second. And so it's almost unlimited, the speed of light. But when you multiply that times itself, times everything that you see in this universe, that's a tremendous amount of energy. And that's the point. What we're trying to get across is said here in another statement from scientists, and that is that 99.99999% of everything that we consider to be matter is really empty space. Because when you look at matter, and by that I mean you dive right deep into an atom and you look at the nucleus of the atom and you look at the electron and you consider all the space in the atom, that's the 99.99999%. And that means that when you are looking out at this screen, watching us, looking at everything in this world, you're only seeing 0.00001% of what's really there. And so the more we start realizing that this is a lot like a picture of us that I'm using as a metaphor. And what I'm trying to say with this image is that you and I are like icebergs, where only a small bit is showing up here in this reality. And so that's 10% of the iceberg, and the other 90% is unseen. So like an iceberg, but let's turn it over so that we get a better perspective, because really the bigger part of you created this part that is seen. You see, scientists today look at just the little part, the visible part that we can see, the tip of the iceberg, and they are saying that that tip inside your head, you're creating the rest of this reality. You've created the rest of the iceberg from the small bit that shows up here. But that doesn't make any sense. It really is the other way around. It's the largest part of ourselves, the unseen part of ourselves, that precipitates into this reality and into our bodies, which is one reason why the mystics call this around us an illusion, because it is only a small part of reality. So here I've taken that iceberg and I've broken it into soul at the top and then multiple dimensions, because that's really what we're talking about. When we talk about the bigger part of ourselves, we're talking about the multidimensional aspect of what it is to be a human being. So that means that on the very bottom, we have the physical, the solid, the liquid, the gas. That's down here in the physical. Right next to the physical body, we have the etheric field, which is that energetic field that surrounds the body, which is still invisible, but it's part of the physical. It's because it's interphasing with the physical so strongly. It's that part of the etheric field that even Einstein referred to as the medium through which everything else, all the energy of the universe, is conducted. But this multidimensional part is not totally unfamiliar to us. When you look at the 4D astral, that's the next dimension up. That's where the emotions hang out. That's where some people are able to see the colors of an aura and can see when two people sit next to each other that their energy fields blend. That when they get upset, there seems to be more red. When they seem to be calm, there's more green in that aura. And we even paint rooms green colors to try to calm people down. And that's happening through the emotional body, which is part of the astral, the multidimensional aspect of our being. And then the mental, that's where we can go into the future, into the past, and at the speed of thought. Some people can actually tune into that and see what might be coming around the corner. Get that feeling that's coming into them, that intuition. And so we're familiar with these aspects of our multidimensional body, but what we're wanting to do is expand it, move more into that larger part of ourselves and take command of our full sense of who we are. And see, one of the main reasons, and here I have another little metaphor showing the ship, that soul connected by a lifeline to the human being. That's us down here. And without that connection to soul, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't even survive. But when we open to the flow of energy that's coming through from soul, through all these different dimensions, that opens up everything in our lives. That's where your health and well-being comes from. When you block that flow, that's where you get sick. That's where you don't feel good. That's where you're missing the love and joy in your life. It's when you open to that higher part of yourself that you find the wisdom and the creativity and your ability to manifest and create. And all the conflict in your life seems to disappear. So does the stress when we're able to go into deep meditation because we're connecting to that bigger part of ourselves. That's where mindfulness, the inner peace comes from, all the connection. And so when we are able to connect to the bigger part of ourselves, that's where we're able to connect to the truth of who we are, and we're able to start to communicate and be fully operating as human beings. So, something else to really understand is that there are no causes in this dimension. It's only the effects of what was initiated on the higher dimensions. And that's very, very powerful. I mean, think about that. When anything in this reality happens, manifests, it's really something that's only the result of having been started on a mental level, your thoughts about it first, your emotional body began that whole process, or it happened on a soul level, it happened on a karmic level, some other higher level finally brings us back into a manifestation of what's happening here.
I think that's a really, really important piece of taking that deeply into the way we conduct our lives. Because what it says to me is that it's really about soul, because soul is the multidimensional aspect of who each one of us is. And then, you know, our physical is really a projection from that. So the more that I operate from that greater connection, that connection not only of my soul, but the soul of each person that I'm in relationship with, the soul of the universe, you know, the essence of what's out here in nature, then that experience is so much deeper and so much more nurturing. And so, you know, when something isn't going right in our lives, so many times I know that the way that I've been programmed is to look at, well, how do I take care of it from the smaller part of who I am? But this is a statement that says when we take care of it, or we look to work with the higher part of who we are, that's really where the greatest impact is.
And that's why meditation is so important in allowing you to connect to the bigger part of yourself. And so, back to this thought and what we're talking about now and want to bring in is that source, soul, where everything comes from in the entire universe. It resonates with this physical dimension and all the other dimensions. And when I say resonates, it's similar to a C tuning fork, that when you play a C tone, that tuning fork starts to vibrate. And Source is moving into our lives through and into everything in creation through number and pattern and frequency, cycle and time. All of this comes down to what we call sacred geometry. It's the entire space-time continuum, and it includes everything, absolutely everything. Here is a model created called the Amplitude Hedra. And what it is a geometric object that has been discovered to be applicable in creating all particle interactions. And it can be done so much more simply than the pages and pages and pages of calculations that were needed before. A couple of scientists were able to graph it onto a geometry, and that's shown the bare bones at the right. And David Wilcock, an author, was able to point out that this is actually 25% of a star tetrahedron, which is one tetrahedron pointing up through another tetrahedron. And then a couple of other scientists from Poland were able to photograph an actual photon. That is the single most basic unit of light. So what we're seeing here is that light itself is geometric. So here's taking the star tetrahedron and turning it on its side, you can see the similarity with the photon. Now, expressing it in another way, if we take that star tetrahedron, the center part of it, when you connect the points where each line crosses, you get an octahedron. And then when you connect all the points, you get a cube. And this is known as Metatron's cube. But what is shown now in the center of this picture are two images that were made by a method called cymatics. And this was done by a Swedish scientist, Hans Jenny. And what is of interest here is that these two images were done on a flat plate where the frequency was changed and it moved from one shape to another shape. And so it's noted in all the books that, oh, we moved from one shape to another because we changed the frequency. But what really happened, as you can see from the two images that just came up, these are two different views of the same geometry, Metatron's cube. So what happened by changing the frequency was not a new image, but it was a different view of the same image. But that image was here on a flat plate. So what we actually were doing was we were tapping in to the 3D reality of sound and looking at it from different perspectives. Because when we build a model, like you can see down in the lower parts of the picture, we can see these are the two views of this three-dimensional model. And this brings us to a couple of other really important points. And that is that when you want to affect reality, the way sound works, the way light works, the way everything in our reality works, it works with three-dimensional energies. And even going on, they go into fourth, fifth, higher dimensional aspects. But if we want to affect change in this reality, we need to work with three-dimensional aspects of reality. The 2D pictures that we have in books, the picture of Metatron's cube that we see when we Google Metatron's cube on the internet, they're almost all two-dimensional. And even though they're very instructional and they're pretty to look at, they don't carry much energy. Because if you take a two-dimensional image and you turn it sideways, it disappears. Now, something else to notice is when we look at these center images that were created by Hans Jenny, is that where you see the image, the white part, those are the lycopodium powder particles. Those are the small bits of material that were forced into those corners by the energy. The energy is in the blank spaces. So think of it this way. If you had a room that you never cleaned and you were always walking through that room, after a short while, all the dust bunnies and dirt would collect in the corners of the room. And where the energy is, where everything is going on, is where nothing is seen. So think of your reality. Everything you're looking at is the absence of where the energy is. You have to look between the lines to find the energy. You have to look into the spaces. You have to initially, as a human being, go inside to the bigger part of yourself to find the light of God and where the energy truly resides.